Hey guys, it's Britt, and it's Thursday, which means it's time for the second installment of Thrones Thursday. We are going to be talking about episodes 3 and 4 of season 1 of Game of Thrones. So if you've watched that or you already know what happens, continue on, or else you're going to get spoiled. So this video is going to be in two parts. The first part will obviously be discussing Episode 3, Cripples, Bastards, and Broken Things, and the second part will be discussing Episode 4, Lord Snow. So, without further ado, let's discuss this episode. So, Cripples, Bastards, and Broken Things. We start off with with Ned and the girls arriving in King's Landing. And right off the bat, Ned is pulled into the throne room and has a discussion with Jaime, who is, of course, as we know from the previous two episodes. And if you haven't watched that, that will be linked up here somewhere. And Jaime is also known as the Kingslayer because he actually, before Robert came into power, we learned that Jaime actually, we already kind of knew that Jaime was a Kingslayer, but we really didn't have that backstory. So while Ned's in the throne room, he has this conversation with Jaime, and Ned is obviously pretty bitter because Jaime not only killed King Aerys III, the Targaryen king, but the Targaryen king that Jaime killed also had Ned's father and brother killed. So Ned kind of indirectly blames Jaime for all of that, and they have this really interesting conversation about how that all went down, and Ned kind of says, "Oh, how do you sleep at night? Is that what you tell yourself to make yourself feel better that you killed the king? How do you sleep?" And Jaime essentially says, I didn't want to, but he was actually, am I venturing out way too deep already? Well, Jaime kind of says, yeah, I'm the Kingslayer. Everybody knows it. And the introduction of Varys comes shortly after. Varys, aka the Spider. Varys is very untrustworthy because he has what he refers to as little birds. They're children, and these children collect information and they bring it to him. And so Varys is like an informant for everyone. There's no loyalty with Varys, really, so far. So Varys is introduced along with the king's brother, Renly Baratheon, who obviously is next in line for the throne. And we meet good old Littlefinger, Peter Baelish. He got the nickname Littlefinger because he comes from where they call the Fingers. That's where he grew up. So, and when Peter was young and best friends with Catelyn Stark, Ned's wife, she actually nicknamed him Littlefinger because he was very small. And that's how he got that nickname. And he is also not to be trusted. If you see me looking off to the corner, that's because I have notes here. Okay. Ned is surprised because he's pulled off to a meeting, and essentially he says, "Oh, we're having a meeting without Robert," and Littlefinger and Varys kind of explain to him that the king isn't the most responsible of people, and he doesn't really attend meetings that he doesn't see fit to attend when he is indisposed, whether that be sleeping, he's too drunk, or he's in bed with a whore. Ned learns that the crown is $6 million in debt due to Robert's extravagant spending. And Ned is obviously very upset about that. He wants to talk to Robert about that at a later time. Okay, so then we go to Joffrey and Cersei, and they talk about the death of Lady and the butcher's boy, Mikau. Joffrey says, "I don't trust the Starks. I don't want to be married to the Stark girl. Do I have to marry Sansa?" Of course, he's talking about Sansa. And Cersei says, "Yes, you have to marry her, but that does not mean that you have to spend every waking moment with her. Essentially, that means that you don't have to worry about being loyal to her, because obviously Robert is not loyal to Cersei. Like, the marriage is basically political power plays. So while Ned and Catelyn genuinely love each other, that's obviously not the case for all marriages in Westeros. And Joffrey believes that the North has too much power. The North kind of has... Ned serves Robert. Robert is his best friend, and Robert... The Starks are wardens in the North, and Joffrey thinks that they have too much power. Of course, Cersei essentially asks him, "How would you do things?" And Joffrey says, I would demand that they take power." And of course, because Cersei is blinded by the love of her child and she wants to spoil him rotten, she essentially agrees with him. Let's see, what else? Arya and Sansa are upset with each other, understandably so. In Arya's point of view, Sansa told a lie, and that resulted in her friend's death. But there's a consequence to Sansa's actions that she did not see coming. As a result of Sansa lying and not speaking out against Joffrey and telling the truth, since they couldn't find Nymeria, Lady unfortunately took her place. And Sansa is very upset and probably not thinking rationally. And at the time, she is about 13, and 13-year-olds don't always handle things in the most mature manner. And I know she's kind of annoying right now, but as the series goes on, she will get better. Okay. Ned comes across Arya playing with her sword needle. And Arya says that she doesn't want to be a lady. She, this has never been Arya's thing. She's always been kind of the tomboy type. And when Ned says, this is an actual sword, this isn't a toy. And I think Arya understands that, and Ned kind of sits down with her and says, "We can't always discuss what we want." And Sansa was only King's Landing is not like the North, and Sansa was only trying to do what she felt is right. Essentially, the politics are different here. You can't be honorable, and Sansa had to be quote-unquote loyal to Joffrey. Yes. Okay. But when Ned learns that she actually wants to learn how to use a sword, Ned actually says you should learn how to use the sword, and so he contacts a man named Syrio Farrell, and he is under the pretense that Arya is actually not in fact getting sword lessons, but dance lessons. So they call him the dancing master. In King's Landing, if they knew that Arya was getting sword training, I think Arya would be in pretty big trouble, especially with the current state of things in King's Landing. Okay, so we have Bran. Bran and Old Nan. Old Nan is, she's Bran's wet nurse. I think she was Bran's wet nurse, but she's also she also tells stories, and Bran says, "Oh, I always like the scary stories," and Old Nan tells him, you really don't understand what it's like to have hardship. I know you've lost use of your legs, but you don't really know much about real hardship, where the Stark words are winter's coming, and winters in Westeros are not like the ones that we have here. The winters are very long and very cold, and mothers had to smother their children rather than have them starve, and it was a very scary time for people, and the Stark children don't know how lucky they are. Okay. Catelyn arrives at the capital, or King's Landing, and she is instructed, she is escorted by these guards to Peter Baelish's brothel. As I explained before, Peter and Kat have been friends, and at first Kat is very upset with Littlefinger, and I should call him Peter. Peter says, well, if they're looking for you, they're not going to look for you in a brothel. So Peter sends a raven to Ned. Well, no, Peter doesn't send a raven to Ned, I'm sorry. Ned gets word that Bran is awake, and Bran is alive. Not okay, but alive. And Peter comes in and says, well, you should tell your wife. And Ned kind of says, what are you talking about? And so Peter brings him to the brothel, and Ned, of course, thinks that this is a giant joke, and kind of threatens Peter until Kat kind of pokes her head out, and he goes, oh, you are here, essentially. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. Okay, so when they go inside, they have a conversation about this knife that was used to murder Bran. And Varys, we learn, is also in the brothel, obviously, Varys and Littlefinger kind of seem to be working together at this point. And Varys says, I don't know who this knife is, but Peter speaks up and says, oh, I know who this knife belongs to. And Kat says, who? And he says, well, it's mine, but I lost it to Tyrion Lannister. And so that only affirms Catelyn's suspicions that the Lannisters are indeed behind the Brand's injuries. So we go to Tyrion Lannister. Jon is in the Night's Watch, and he's feeling underappreciated because they mock him. They call him Lord Snow. Of course, this is a mocking because he is not a highborn. He is a bastard, and he has the surname Snow. And so they call him Lord Snow, but he has the formal training that all lordlings have, while the Night's Watch, they're essentially slavers. Or not slavers, they are essentially criminals, and they've never held a sword, and a few people point this out to Jon. The Master at Arms at the Wall says they don't have the training that you do. And Tyrion also reaffirms this, because we all know Tyrion is at the Wall right now, and says, you know, you may be a bastard, but you have it better than a lot of the people here did. A lot of you look around you and you see criminals, but some of them were committing crimes so their family didn't starve to death. And this really hits home for Jon, and Jon kind of looks at everybody in a different light. Alrighty. Where should we go from here? Jon is also ambushed, and Tyrion kind of comes to his rescue, and like I said, kind of reaffirms, hey, these people aren't like you. You're lucky. Basically, Jon Snow, check your privilege. So, alrighty. Ned sends Catelyn off, and we get a scene with Robert. Am I missing something in between? No. Yeah, we get a conversation with Robert, his guard, Sir Barristan, about the first kills. Sir Barristan says his first kill was a Tyroshi, and Robert says that his first kill was a Tarly. Now, House Tarly hasn't been introduced yet. I believe that is next episode. But Robert clearly has a taste for blood. And he's unhappy being king. He mocks his squire, poor Lancel Lannister, just wants to get him more wine, and Robert is not a nice person whatsoever. And I think that's clearly prevalent throughout this episode. He also mocks Jaime during this scene, who is the King's Guard. And he says, what did I write in my note here? Excuse me for a second. He calls for Jaime, essentially mocks Jaime for guarding him. And Aerys, we learn that the Mad King, Aerys Targaryen's last words were, burn them all. Now, this seems insignificant right now, but that's going to become very important later, so remember that. And also, take note of how Jaime acts right now, and see if you notice changes as the series goes on. Okay, Daenerys is starting to understand the ways of the Dothraki, and she's starting to understand her place. The show doesn't really tell us how long it's been, but Circe says in the first episode it takes about a month to get from Winterfell to King's Landing. So I'm going to assume that it has been at least a month or two, but since we've last seen everybody. So she's starting to understand her place. She's getting lessons in Dothraki, and we come to learn that Daenerys is actually with child. She's pregnant. And Ser Jorah is very taken by this news. And so is Varys, Viseron. So is Viseron. Viseron, I doubt he's going to be happy about this. Because that child could be a threat to his claim to the throne, while Daenerys is married to Drogo and doesn't have a claim to the throne. If that heir is male, which Daenerys guesses that the heir is male, the baby inside her is male, then that will pose a very big threat to her claim. Alrighty. Yes, I think that's all I really wanted to cover. I know I'm not covering everything, but this video is already 21 minutes long. I do want to talk about Tyrion and Benjen a little bit. The Starks and the Lannisters are obviously at odds with each other right now. Benjen probably suspects that Tyrion may or may not have something to do with Bran, and if Benjen believes that the Lannisters are behind it, whether Tyrion played a hand in it or not, he is damned because he is a Lannister. So the Lannisters have wronged his family in his eyes, so all Lannisters must be at fault. Tyrion sets off the wall, he says, I'm gonna go back home, but I'm gonna stop in Winterfell, and because Jon asks him if he's going to stop in Winterfell, and he says he will, and that he will relay Jon's message to Bran about him going to visit before Bran woke up, and he woke up and Jon was gone, off to the wall, and that Jon misses him, tell him that I miss him. And of course, Tyrion, being the man that he is, will obviously do that. And that's it for this episode. Stay tuned for part 2 coming soon. I will link that up here eventually when it is uploaded. Alright guys, I love you, and I'll see you in the next video.